They considered it sacred, a gift from the gods, whispered through the temple smoke that rose to the heavens like visible prayers, a gateway to the divine, guarded by prophets, shamans, and sages who understood its deeper meaning, beyond mere sensation or escapism. But somewhere in the heart of modernity, something profound has been lost. Rituals have faded into memory like old chants. No one knows how to sing them anymore. Reverence has dissolved into recreation, transforming what was once a liturgy into a way of life. Once a sacred gateway, it has become a banal pastime, displayed in neon-lit pharmacies and marketed with the same energy as fast food. We legalized the plant but forgot its soul. We commercialized the form but left out the essence. Today we ask superficial questions. Indica or sativa? THC or CBD? I know, it's good for me. But no one dares to question the deeper truth. What effect does this ancestral master have on the human mind? What portals does it open, and what passes through them? Because cannabis doesn't just relax, body or rest. The mind unlocks something far more mysterious within us. It touches the subtle realms where consciousness meets the unknown, where the ego meets its own reflection, where the seeker meets what they truly seek. Before newspapers and parking lot hangouts, before legalization and cultural rebranding, before cannabis became a meme or a political statement, there was fire in leaves and just enough of someone brave, enough to bring them together for the first time, that the first flame embraced the plant in a forgotten moment of history, and from their sacred union something extraordinary was born, not just smoke but presence itself, not an intoxication but an invitation, not to escape reality, but to enter its hidden chambers. The ancients did not seek to rise in our modern sense, but they sought access to the hidden chambers of consciousness in dialogue, with the divine at the marrow of existence, where truth without ornaments for human interpretation for them. Cannabis was neither entertainment, nor medicine, nor a social lubricant. It was a sacred technology, a key that could unlock doors in the mind forever closed to normal consciousness, revealing landscapes of the soul that could only be mapped through direct experience. But this is what they knew. We have forgotten. All portals open both ways. When you look at the mystery looks back at you. What comes out depends entirely on what you bring to the threshold. Your intentions, your preparation, your willingness to face whatever comes your way. You've come to understand that cannabis doesn't conjure up visions, but rather a mirror. And mirrors by nature neither flatter nor deceive. They reflect with brutal honesty what is presented to them, revealing not only light but also shadow, not only peace but also the chaos we've buried beneath layers of distraction. This is why the same plant that makes one person laugh makes another cry. Why do some float in cosmic bliss while others sink into paranoia? Existential because the same strain, the same dose, and the same environment can produce radically different experiences in different people. The plant itself remains neutral, like a mirror reflecting the contents of its inner landscape. It makes no distinction between worthy and unworthy users, between pure and impure intentions. It simply amplifies the present by increasing the volume of the existing frequency. The mystics of antiquity knew this truth well. They did not approach cannabis they didn't use it casually or to escape life's challenges. They prepared for it through fasting, prayer and deep introspection, understanding that they would face it unfiltered, without the comfortable masks of everyday life. Cannabis doesn't amplify what doesn't yet exist. It simply reveals what was hidden. It brings to the surface what was buried. It forces one to become aware of what the ego has so carefully kept buried deep within the psyche. It is the greatest gift. The plant and its most challenging aspect force us to confront what we have avoided in our culture of constant distractions, incessant stimulation, and constant rejection of depth. This kind of pure personal encounter can be overwhelming, even terrifying. The racing thoughts, the sudden awareness of mortality, the seemingly unexpected emotional outburst are not side effects, but revelations. The plant works perfectly. It works exactly as it should, revealing to you what you brought to the altar of ancient India. The Vedas. They spoke of cannabis as one of the 5 sacred plants, a divine gift containing amrita, the nectar of immortality. Yet it was never consumed, neglected, taken lightly, never approached without deep reverence and careful preparation. Sadhus, those wandering mystics, who have renounced material life to seek union with the divine, approach cannabis with the same reverence they feel for fire itself. Their hair is matted like the roots of the earth. Their bodies are coated with sacred ash. Their thoughts are directed only toward introspection, toward the source. Their relationship with cannabis is not one of indulgence, but of ego annihilation. Through long meditations in mountain, caves, or on temple steps, they use the plant not to escape from themselves, but to burn away the layers of false identity that obscure their true nature. Each puff becomes a pyre for the ego. Each exhale is a release from attachment to name, form, and the illusion of separation. They chant Bombole as the smoke rises like a sacred scriptures invoke Shiva, the cosmic destroyer, whose dance dissolves illusion to reveal truth. Yet even within these traditions, warnings resonate through the centuries. Some gurus have warned that cannabis abuse does not dissolve the ego, but rather inflates it. Without proper preparation, fasting, meditation, and devotion, the plant becomes a spiritual trap rather than a gateway to liberation. Swami Sivananda, one of the great modern saints, warned against relying on any substance for growth. The spiritual God resides not in smoke, but in the silence hidden behind the eyes. The plant can reveal the truth, but it cannot replace the slow and patient work of inner purification. In ancient China, Taoist alchemists considered cannabis a mirror herb, reflecting rather than creating, amplifying rather than engendering. They combined it with ginseng and other sacred substances, but it was only after years of inner cultivation and energetic balancing that these masters understood that cannabis amplifies the vital qi already circulating within them. If your energy is harmonious and grounded, anchored in calm and balanced by discipline, the plant can enhance perception, deepen meditation, and even prolong life. On the other hand, if your tu qi is scattered or chaotic, fragmented by trauma, or destabilized by modern life, cannabis will fragment it further, just as ringing a broken bell resonates the pre-existing note. Beautiful when the instrument is in tune, cacophonous when it is broken, they warn that consuming the plant without proper preparation would be tantamount to tuning an instrument. If we push ourselves too hard, something will eventually break. The body must first become a stable vessel, the mind a haven, the soul a grounded flame before it can safely contain an expanded consciousness. This wisdom applies directly to our current situation. We often turn to cannabis when we're stressed or anxious, or in search of escape, precisely when our energy is most unbalanced. The plant then amplifies this chaos, leaving us even more scattered than before, wondering why the medicine has pulled us apart. This made me even sadder. The Taoists understood that cannabis was based on the law of resonance. Every vibrational frequency in the plant is amplified. If you bring peace to it, it amplifies. If you bring fear to it, it intensifies. If you sow confusion, it multiplies until it becomes unbearable. In some branches of Islamic mysticism, Kachi served as a veil-lifting sacrament to shatter the illusion of separation from the divine. Sufi mystics sought fana, the annihilation of the ego in the presence of Allah, dissolution of the false self in the ocean of divine love. In the dim glow of lantern-lit assemblies, the derbis chanted the names of God, breathed deeply, and swirled within themselves, seeking annihilation not in the body, but at the confines of the separate self. For them, the plant was a bridge, a rope leading to the abyss of the soul. But even these ecstatic seekers proceeded with caution. Rumi, the popular mystical poet, offered a crucial warning wrapped in silk about why God was in the intoxication. When it's already dancing within you, sobers you up. He wasn't condemning the plant, but rather highlighting the danger of spiritual shortcuts. The mystics understood that not everyone who crossed the threshold returned with wisdom. Some lost themselves in the experience itself, mistaking the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. They knew that ungrounded ecstasy is another trap of the ego, another form of spiritual materialism. Therefore, authentic practice is always sufficient. It encompassed community, ritual, and leadership. The circle supported the individual in their dissolution and ensured that they could return, integrated rather than dispersed, transformed rather than swept away. They knew that the true test was not how high one flew, but how softly one landed. How did insights translate into daily life? For experiences altered not only perception, but also character. Today, we have inherited the plant, but we have given up wisdom. We have a spiritual extractivism, embracing the outer form and abandoning the inner purpose. Preserving the tool while forgetting its intrinsic utility, cannabis has been stripped of its cultural DNA and transformed into a way of life rather than a liturgy. We smoke joints while checking our phones and consume cannabis in a state of distraction rather than presence. We have eliminated the preparation, ritual, and communal accompaniment that once provided a space for transformation. The result is a generation surrounded by sacred tools, but hungry. In a sacred context, ancient cultures knew that a plant is not sacred because it makes us feel good. It is sacred because it connects us to mystery, and mystery does not tolerate hardship. Rather, it requires preparation, ritual structure, the guidance of elders, and the humility of knowing that we are entering something greater than ourselves. We have democratized access to the plant, while abandoning the wisdom traditions that gave it meaning. It is like giving someone a key without telling them which door it opens. How can I protect myself, or what can I find on the other side? Pharmacies sell cannabis, but not the ceremony. The internet offers information, but not the initiation. We have access to the plant, but not to the ancestors who understood its true nature. As a result, we navigate profoundly altered states, guided only by our own confused desires. Carl Jung taught that the greatest fear is total self-acceptance. Cannabis often induces precisely this kind of self-acceptance, radically dissolving the barriers between the conscious and unconscious minds, between the person we present and the shadow we hide. When the filters fall, everything we have buried rises to the surface. The repressed traumas, the unacknowledged desires, the parts of ourselves we banish to the basement of our psyche, because they seem too dangerous, too shameful, too difficult to integrate into our carefully curated self-image. It is not a punishment. It is an invitation, an opportunity to rediscover our wholeness, to encounter the parts of ourselves we never learned to accept. Fear and paranoia. This sudden avalanche of emotions is not a malfunction, but a revelation, a message from the depths of the soul. However, without preparation or proper integration practices, this encounter in the shadows can overwhelm us instead of healing us. We feel exposed, vulnerable, sometimes paranoid, not because the plant is dangerous, but because we are encountering parts of ourselves we have learned to love. Indigenous shamans understood this process perfectly. They expected darkness before light. They found difficult experiences purifying. They knew that healing often feels more like a breakup than the breakup itself, that the soul must vomit its poison before receiving its medicine. In their worldview, there are no bad journeys, only difficult remedies, demanding initiations, sacred encounters with aspects of self that require attention. The question is not how to avoid difficult experiences, but how. Face them with courage and wisdom. Perhaps the greatest trap of cannabis is the illusion of instant enlightenment. The plant can offer profound insights into cosmic consciousness, divine love, and universal interconnectedness, which seem more real and meaningful than ordinary waking consciousness. But these insights are different from embodiment. Peak experiences do not equate to lasting transformation. The mistake many users make is to confuse the intensity of the experience with its meaning. Spiritual emotional charge with inner work time, expansion with sustained growth. Many users confuse cannabis knowledge with wisdom, downloads with development, feelings with facts. They confuse poetic language with ethical transformation, cosmic visions for character. Development downloads profound perspectives that do not change the way they treat their family, community, or themselves. True spiritual growth is not measured by the height of their visions, but by the consequences. Your actions remain peaceful even when stuck in traffic. Love extends to those who provoke you. Wisdom leads you to make daily decisions that serve a greater good than your own comfort. The spiritual ego loves cannabis because it offers an endless source of enriching experiences that require no change, no effort, and no true dedication. You may feel like you're evolving, when in reality, you're completely stuck in the same patterns without any practice. Integration, reflection, journaling, lifestyle changes, ongoing spiritual discipline. Even the most profound experiences with cannabis are more about spiritual entertainment than transformation. cosmic tourism rather than true pilgrimage. There is a spirituality that soothes rather than awakens. It provides a sense of growth without the friction of real change. In cases of abuse, cannabis can become the ideal tool for this type of spirituality. Those who use spiritual detours speak of connecting to the divine without disconnecting from their own emotions. They evoke cosmic consciousness while avoiding the difficult task of healing. In their relationships, they seek transcendental experiences and refuse to engage in the mundane work of personal development. The plant offers the user a choice. Use it to go deeper within yourself or to look beyond. Both are spiritual. Both can wrapped in beautiful language and mystical concepts. Only one leads to true transformation. True spiritual practice isn't always pleasant. It often involves confronting what we'd rather avoid, feeling what we've numbed, and taking responsibility for patterns we've blamed others for. Cannabis can support this work or help us avoid it altogether. The false light of spiritual bypassing appears as wisdom, but functions as avoidance. It appears as depth, but it's still superficial. It feels like growing up, but it doesn't lead to real change. It's particularly seductive because it allows the ego to maintain its sense of superiority while avoiding the humility necessary for true transformation. The solution isn't to give up cannabis, but to remember how to approach it with reverence. This means creating a sacred space, even if it's just a candle in a quiet room, a moment of silence before lighting it. A thoughtful intention means connecting with yourself through silence, fasting, or meditating before consuming means treating the plant like a wise man with respect, care, and understanding. An understanding that we must connect with something that has its own intelligence and purpose. Most importantly, it means having clear intentions rather than vague hopes for positive feelings. Ask yourself, am I using this plant to escape or explore, to escape from myself, or to discover myself better, to avoid difficult emotions or process them more deeply? Sacred use requires community and support. Whether through established traditions or conscious circles of seekers, the ego is too cunning, too adept at self-deception, to navigate these murky waters alone. We need mirrors the others to see clearly. This doesn't mean that every cannabis use must be a formal ceremony, but it does mean approaching the plant with the awareness of working with a master. Consuming a substance doesn't just mean understanding that consciousness is sacred and worth living. Once the smoke clears, the real work begins. Integration isn't about sustaining the euphoria or chasing the next experience, but about embodying the wisdom that has emerged along the way. This is where true transformation happens, not through a cosmic download, but through the daily discipline of living differently. Integration might mean having difficult conversations you've been avoiding. It might mean changing lifestyle habits that no longer work for you. It might mean addictions, healing relationships, or pursuing goals in alignment with what the plant has revealed about your deeper self. The plant can show you the mountain, but you still have to climb it. It can show you the path, but you must walk it yourself. It can open the door, but you must choose to walk through it and live differently on the other side. This is where true spiritual maturity develops, not in the experience at the summit, but in how you integrate this knowledge into the valleys of life. Typically, this isn't what we see when consciousness is altered, but rather what we see when behavior returns to normal. Many users have profound experiences with cannabis that they describe as transformative, but afterward their lives don't really change. They return to the same patterns, relationships, and unconscious habits as if nothing had happened. This is where the real work begins. Building a sacred relationship with cannabis requires the same discipline as any other practice. Spiritually, this means dedicating time to integration, developing rituals that honor the plant's teaching function, and developing an inner stability to welcome whatever arises. This may involve keeping a journal to record information and patterns. It may involve observing regular periods of abstinence to avoid becoming dependent on the plant and reaching deeper states. It may involve finding teachers or community members who it helps you overcome difficult experiences. Sacred practice also means developing the discernment to know when not to use cannabis. There are times when the psyche is too fragile, when life circumstances demand clear thinking, when the most spiritual option is to remain grounded in normal consciousness. The plant does not require constant use. In fact, the wisest practitioners often use it sparingly, treating it as a special occasion rather than a daily habit. They understand this. Integration, this takes time. This wisdom needs space to consolidate. This constant expansion without consolidation leads to spiritual indigestion. Developing a sacred practice also means learning to achieve states of expansion without substances through meditation, breathwork, movement, or other practices that develop the natural ability to alter consciousness. The goal is not addiction, but progress. Perhaps the most advanced practice with cannabis is knowing when not to use it. This requires developing an inner sensitivity that we must distinguish the ego's desire for escape from the true spiritual desire for expansion. The ego loves cannabis because it relieves the discomforts of the human condition. It offers a temporary escape from anxiety, depression, boredom, and the general difficulties of existence. But this is not the plant's most important function. Rather, it is an abuse of its sacred nature. Truly sacred use often engenders discomfort. The discomfort of confronting the shadow and questioning one's beliefs. We want to feel emotions we previously avoided. The ego tries to divert the experience of difficulty into pleasure, but this hinders the plant's nurturing function. Developing moderation means managing difficult emotions without using cannabis as a narcotic. It means finding other ways to achieve peace, creativity, and connection without altering brain chemistry. This doesn't mean you should never use cannabis to relax or pleasure, but don't confuse these uses with spiritual practice. There's nothing wrong with recreational use, but it's important to be honest about what you're doing and why. With the legalization and social acceptance of cannabis, we have the opportunity to reclaim its sacred dimension without losing its accessibility. This requires education not only on dosage and effects, but also on the plant's spiritual history and its appropriate ceremonial use. We need modern elders who understand both ancestral wisdom and context, contemporary experts who can guide researchers safely through the territories opened up by cannabis. We need communities of practice where people can explore the depths of the plant with the appropriate support and guidance. We must remember that legalization was never just about the right to get high, but about restoring our relationship with the masters of the plant, who have been companions of human consciousness for millennia. Cannabis is part of our spiritual heritage, and we simply treat it as a commercial product dishonors this heritage. The future of sacred cannabis lies not in a return to ancestral traditions, but in the development of new mediums that honor the essential nature of the plant and meet contemporary needs. This involves the development of modern rituals, contemporary guidance systems, and integrative practices adapted to our times. We find ourselves at a crossroads between two ways of being. With this ancestral master, there is a path back to the sacred, ritual, reverence, and true transformation. The other continues its path toward recreational use, spiritual escape, and the loss of opportunities for true growth. The plant itself remains neutral, a mirror ready to reflect every consciousness that approaches it. But the decision to treat it is entirely ours. We can continue to treat it as a commodity, or remember its true nature, that of a sacred ally in humanity's ancestral quest for meaning, healing, and transcendence. The cannabis plant has survived millennia of prohibition and persecution, veneration and commercialization. It's still here. It offers us the same benefits it always did, if we are humble enough to embrace them properly. The question isn't whether cannabis is sacred, but whether we are willing to sanctify it enough to work with it consciously. For ultimately, the plant can only take us as far as we are willing to go, and only as far as we are willing to go. Cannabis can, if approached with the necessary respect and preparation, be a valuable ally in the evolution of human consciousness, but its sacredness depends on the hands that hold it and the heart that welcomes it. The plant continues to whisper to those who know how to listen. It does not wait for laws to change or societies to evolve, but rather for individuals to show respect for it, if we are willing to approach it not as a substance, but as a teacher, and not simply as a teaching. It's entertainment, but as a sacrament it's responded to accordingly. The portal remains open. The question is whether you enter it wisely, or simply gaze upon it curiously. The difference determines not only your experience, but also your transformation. The choice is yours and the plant awaits.